Hey and welcome to the Daily Arsenal News Show. Let's begin with our daily news. Arsenal injury blow as Gabriel Magalhaes couldn't join Saliba and Tomiyasu on a treatment table. Arsenal suffered a painful defeat on penalties last night as Sporting Lisbon knocked them out of the Europa League. Gabriel Martinelli's missed spot kick proved enough to end the tie. The young Brazilian missed from 12 yards, while Sporting converted all five of their efforts to go through. For Arsenal, it was a bruising night really. They lost both Takahiro Tomiyasu and William Saliba on the night through injury, while the Daily Mail is reporting more players might have suffered knocks as well. Worryingly for Arsenal, the report names Gabriel Magalhaes as one of those players who has potentially picked up an injury. The Mail writes how Zinchenko seemed to have a problem, while Gabriel was also spotted limping up the pitch. Gabriel and Zinchenko being injured will worry Mikel Arteta. Of course, given the nature of the game and the fact it went 120 minutes, it could simply be a case of cramp or tight muscles for the pair. Further reports have also suggested that Leandro Trossard was struggling as well, and if that's the case, it takes the tally to five players coming out of the Sporting clash with knocks. This was always the worry for Arsenal fans this season, flying high at the top of the Premier League. The Europa League was always going to cause issues. Mikel Arteta went for a strong side as well, clearly wanting to win the competition. Arteta went with some big names, but it seems to have backfired. Losing the likes of Saliba and Gabriel could be catastrophic for Arsenal. Trossard and Zinchenko too have become key players. Arteta will be hoping for good news soon, but on the whole, it feels like Arsenal have come out of this latest battle more than worse for wear. Mikel Arteta shares what he's now told Arsenal's player in the dressing room after a Sporting loss. Mikel Arteta was disappointed to see his Arsenal side go out of the Europa League to Sporting Lisbon at the Emirates last night. Penalties were needed and in the end, it was a miss from Gabriel Martinelli that put Arsenal out of the competition. For the Gunners, it was a disappointing end to what has been a solid Europa League campaign. Of course, it does mean they can turn attentions to the Premier League, where they sit top of the table. Speaking in his press conference after the Sporting game last night, Mikel Arteta was questioned on what he told his players in the dressing room. And rather than being too downbeat, Arteta explained how he'd told his players the focus is now firmly on Crystal Palace this weekend. He said the following: just that we are all disappointed and we have to look ourselves. There are things we have to do better to have bigger margins to win the game and not rely on the last 20 minutes or extra time or penalty shootout to go through in the competition. Now, there are 11 games and that's the only focus that we have, and everybody is thinking about one thing, that's Palace, and being in the best mental and physical condition. A lot of clarity and all the energy is there for Sunday. The Gunners know that a win this weekend will put the penalty defeat firmly to bed. Interestingly, it now won't be against Patrick Viera, who was sacked by Palace this morning. Mikel Arteta will be keen to see just how his players react here. There is plenty for them to be upbeat about, and they cannot let a European exit derail their season. Arsenal have bounced back before this season, and a game against Palace, who can't score at the moment, gives them the ideal chance to rebound again. Journalist shares what he was told about William Saliba as he left the Emirates last night. Speaking on his YouTube channel, Charles Watts has been discussing William Saliba and what he did after the game against Sporting on Thursday. Saliba was substituted with an injury in the Europa League on Thursday, and Gunners fans are waiting with bated breath to see if they will be without their key man for an extended period. Luckily, it sounds as though Saliba may be okay. Watts spoke to some of his colleagues after the Sporting game, and they saw Saliba walking out of the dressing room looking absolutely fine without the aid of crutches. Unfortunately, the same can't be said of Takahiro Tomiyasu, who left the dressing room on crutches after the match. Saliba walking away from the game unaided is a good sign, but we are not out of the woods just yet. Indeed, The fact that Saliba can walk just fine definitely doesn't mean that he isn't injured. After all, playing 90 minutes of football is a completely different thing to being able to walk out of a stadium without crutches. However, as Watts says, it's a good sign, and we can only hope that he is fit enough to be back in the team as soon as possible as the Gunners try to sustain their title challenge. Luckily, even if Saliba is injured, the international break is upon us, so he shouldn't miss too much action in any case. Mikel Arteta shares the real reason why he subbed Gabriel Jesus last night. Mikel Arteta has explained the thinking behind taking Gabriel Jesus off at half-time of Arsenal's Europa League exit against the Sporting. Jesus made his first start since the injury he picked up at the World Cup, but it only lasted 45 minutes before the Gunners went on to lose on penalties. Gabriel Martinelli's penalty miss meant that Arsenal went out at the round of 16 stage and can focus purely on the Premier League title race now. Speaking to club media after the game, Arteta said that other injury blows meant he had to act quickly over Jesus at the interval. Arteta was asked if a Jesus substitution was planned and said, "Yeah, and we decided to do that because we had to manage the subs, and thank God that we took him out, especially after the two substitution windows that we had to use in the first half. But that was the plan, and he was coming from an injury as well. We know the game could go to extra time, and we have to manage that, and he looked okay." Jesus' comeback has been managed carefully, and Arsenal seemed to reason that it was better to take him off a bit earlier than planned than risk a situation where he plays 90 or 120 minutes before he was ready. That is the wise decision in terms of not risking a setback. And while Arteta outlined his desire to win the Europa League, going out of the tournament may well be a blessing in disguise. They can focus their resources on maintaining their lead in the Premier League, and that may be especially pertinent on a night where they suffered injuries to William Saliba and Tomiyasu. Pundit says Fabio Viera was basically invisible against Sporting last night. Speaking on Virgin Media Sport, Richard Dunn has been discussing Arsenal's performance against Sporting in the Europa League and Fabio Viera's showing in the game. The Gunners put in one of their worst performances of the season on Thursday against Sporting. They were held to a draw by the Portuguese side, but they looked very lethargic and lacked a real cutting edge during the game. Dunn was far from impressed, and he highlighted one Arsenal player in particular as underperforming. Indeed, Dunn says that Fabio Viera was really struggled during the game, claiming that the Portuguese midfielder was basically non-existent in this match. Dunn gave his verdict on the £34 million man. He said, "In the Europa League, they never really reached the heights of the Premier League in their performances, and when you play a team as good as Sporting, you need your best team all the way through. The likes of Vieira really struggled, and he was non-existent in the game, and maybe a couple of others. When you play in this competition, do you rest your players for this or for the Premier League? They will feel the tiredness after this because they have lost the game." Vieira was signed by Arsenal with a lot of hype behind him this summer, but sadly, he is not really made the grade at the Emirates quite yet. Of course, he is only young and he has time on his side, but the fact of the matter is that he has had very little impact since coming to England. On Thursday, he had the chance to make a real impression, but as Dan says, he was basically invisible for most of the game, and you would have thought that this match would suit him, seeing as it was against Portuguese opposition. Fingers crossed Vieira can start to showcase his talents a bit more, because he is falling behind where he should be at this point in time. Agent reveals how Jorginho's move to Arsenal unfolded. Jorginho made a surprising move from Chelsea to Arsenal late into the last transfer window as the Gunners look for a new man in midfield. Mikel Arteta's side have invested in much younger players and wanted to buy Moses Caicedo of Brighton. After the Seagulls turned several bids down, the Gunners turned their attention to an alternative and Jorginho moved across town. The deal happened so quickly, and very few people expected the Euro 2020 winner to move to the Emirates. However, his agent has now opened up on the transfer and how it happened. Joao Santos said via The Sun, 2 days before the transfer market closed, we saw that Chelsea worked to sign Enzo Fernandez. Edu Gaspar wanted the boy, and so we made it happen. A new project. He did very well at Chelsea, winning a lot as a team and personally. Interest from Italy, not for January. We had talked to some teams for July. Jorginho has been an established player in the Premier League over the years and Arteta knows him very well. The gaffer acted on that to temporarily solve a problem in his squad and it has been yet another inspiring decision by the Spaniard. Jorginho has started well and we expect him to deliver more outstanding performances for us before this term ends and he might finish it as a Premier League winner. Bacary Sagna insists Bukayo Saka is the best player in the Premier League. If you ask a random Premier League fan who the best player in the competition has been this season, they will probably pick Manchester City striker Erling Haaland. The Norwegian has made a meal of most Premier League defenses this season and continues to show the competition is simply too easy for him. However, former Arsenal man Bacary Sagna believes the best player in the competition this term has been Bukayo Saka. The attacker is leading the Gunners towards winning the title for the first time in 2 decades and remains one man who can deliver in any game. While Haaland scores the goals that City needs, Saka does more work on the field and Arsenal struggles when he has an off game. Sagna is convinced he has been the best player in England this season, the ex-defender says via The Sun. Saka has been the best player in the Premier League this season. I wouldn't be surprised if Erling Haaland is crowned PFA Player of the Year, but up until now, I don't see any other player that's had a bigger impact on their team than Bukayo Saka. We have had an amazing season, thanks in part to the impact Saka has made on this team. The Englishman continues to show he is the player we can trust to make us champions again. It does not matter what impact Haaland makes at City, Saka is one of our own and he is serving us well. Arsenal will move to sign Marco Asensio. According to Team Talk, Arsenal are set to make an offer to Marco Asensio as his Real Madrid contract runs down. The Spaniard could leave the Bernabeu on a free transfer this summer, and a move to the Premier League could be in the offing for the 27-year-old. Indeed, Arsenal, Chelsea and Manchester City are all supposedly set to make offers for the attacker. The Gunners, of course, have quite a good working relationship with Real Madrid after doing deals for the likes of Martin Odegaard and Dani Ceballos in recent years, so seeing them go for Asensio isn't too much of a surprise. The 27-year-old hasn't lived up to expectations at the Bernabeu since being tipped as a future Ballon d'Or winner by Cristiano Ronaldo, but he is still a very talented player in his own right. After all, you don't spend such a long time playing for Los Blancos if you are not a fantastic footballer. Described as a world class in the past, Asensio could be a great addition to this Arsenal side and he would provide a brilliant backup to Bukayo Saka down that right wing as well as offering more depth in the attacking midfield spot. With Manchester City and Chelsea also keen, Arsenal will have to make a real effort to get this deal over the line, but with the Gunners potentially on course to become league champions this season, the idea of playing for the North London club and reuniting with Odegaard may well appeal to Asensio. This is certainly a situation to keep an eye on as we head into the summer transfer window and Asensio's contract continues to take closer to its expiry date. I will be uploading daily Arsenal news, so keep your eyes on the channel and don't forget to like and subscribe. I appreciate your support. Peace out.